All right, let's go ahead and get this in-session party started. Welcome to In-Session Live. It is Thursday, February 13th, almost Valentine's Day. We do love the legislative session for all its strengths and challenges. Thank you for joining us today to get some updates on important issues going on during this session. I am your Director of Strategic Advocacy, Marissa Rathbone. Just as a reminder, we are recording these in-sessions every week so that if your peers or colleagues don't have the benefit of joining live, they will have the opportunity to watch any or all of the recording after the fact. Before we start with the actual agenda in full, I want to be sure to acknowledge that our public schools and facilities operate on the traditional lands of Indigenous peoples. And we engage in the 2025 legislative session to remember that the lands of our state capital were cared for by the people of the Squaxin and Nisqually tribes. We make these acknowledgments to open a space of recognition, inclusion, and respect for our sovereign tribal partners and all Indigenous students, families, staff, legislators, and board members in our communities. A little bit of in the know, I wanted to show you how you can find proposed amendments and committee materials. Oftentimes, this will occur during a second public meeting or after a bill has been initially introduced in its first policy committee. You might see committee materials either to support the explanation for a first meeting, or you'll find amendment language within the committee materials if it's in exec session or possibly a following budget committee or after if it's even moved to the other side. So I wanted you to be adept at being able to find that. I'm going to go ahead and stop share and reshare to make sure you're tracking what I'm showing. And just as an example, I pulled up a bill that Levon is actually going to review for you today, one of our favorite bills of the session, which is on special education funding. But you will note that as it's progressed through the process, it started in early learning K-12, and you can view the original bill there. And then for every time it was heard after, there are supporting committee materials. And I would just recommend, before you ever weigh in on a bill after it's been introduced in its original committee, that you take a look at the committee materials, because oftentimes it has changed and perhaps the most recent document may not fully reflect all the distinct changes to it. You may also want to take a look at the proposed amendments before they're voted on, or you might want to find out how people voted on the proposed amendments or who introduced them. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring up an example here. When it was brought to executive action in the Senate committee, the Senate Early Learning and K-12 committee, there were multiple amendments brought forward to it. So this is how you would go about finding them, because it's scheduled for executive session. You would go down to that area, then you would click on the bill, then you would see that it had the bill report, the bill text, bill history, and then this is where you're going to find some interesting materials like amendments or proposed substitutes. And you can find here that there was an amendment brought forward. It was adopted. It'll tell you if it was adopted or did not pass here. There will also be fiscal note information that you can find here. So all good subtext for the bill before the committee, that if you're trying to look for something and want to find out a little bit more, this is a way for you to dig deeper. So with that, I'm going to stop my share and pass it to Levon Williams, our policy specialist, our advocacy and policy analyst, so that he can walk you through some of the progress on our favorite bills of the session. Levon, what should we know?
Thank you, Marissa. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in session. My name is Levon Williams. I'm the Advocacy and Policy Analyst at WSSDA. So today, you'll hear an overview of Bill 5192, 5263, and 5187. As we look at the Washington State legislators and they're confronting this $12 billion budget deficit over the next 4 years, we really believe there needs to be strategic investments in education because this is a pressing issue. So this week, 3 critical bills in the big 3 made some significant progress in the legislative process. They were heard, as Marissa mentioned earlier, in the Senate Ways and Means Committee, where I would say many superintendents and constituents really voiced their strong support, highlighting their essential needs and measures that really talk to the fundamental needs for our schools throughout the state. You know, as we all could contest to, for years, school districts relied heavily on levies to really fund and cover the cost for the big three. And I think that, I think it led to a shortfall in cuts and enrichment opportunities where students should have throughout the year. So that's really important. I think this is a statement, these big three bills, in terms of legislators really addressing the evolving needs of students, really, despite any of the ongoing financial challenges in this budget, in this session. So as we move forward throughout the bills, you'll see the bill summary in the chat. So I will dig into those now. I would say I would start off with 5192, which is an MSOC bill. The prime sponsor is Senator Nobles. This bill proposes an increase to MSOC allocations for public schools. It also is aimed at addressing the rising costs for supplies, materials, and operating costs that really school districts face throughout the year. Also, it increases the MSOC allocation for each student by 10%, resulting in a total of $1,723.42 per student for general MSOC allocations. Also, it increases the allocations for ninth through 12th grade students to $229.37 per student. I would say these increased allocations are really meant to be used solely on designated categories such as technology, curriculum, textbooks, facilities, maintenance. Also within the bill, it requires each school district to calculate the MSOC allocation based on the average of the district prior 3 years of student enrollment. I know that was a lot to take in. Additionally, inflation adjustments will be made annually for this bill using the implicit price deflator. Also, school districts must report their MSOC expenditures to OSPI, and also I know CTE programs will receive some MSOC amounts in this bill as well. And that will be based on the enrollment of the students in the courses over the prior 3 years. So to kind of finalize on this bill, the funds for this bill can't be spent on anything outside of MSOC categories. So the overarching goal is really the bill is designed to ensure that schools have like adequate funding for essential operational and educational supplies. So as we move on to Bill 5263, the prime sponsor is Peterson. This bill is aimed at improving special education funding and services across the state. It increases the special education funding multipliers. It raises the multipliers for pre through K students to 1.6381, and for K through 12 to students for K through 12 students to 1.32. And it also eliminates the current tiered funding structure that really varies based on the time students spend in general education settings. Also, it removes the funding cap at 16% for special education. Excuse me. This bill really provides a lot of flexibility for districts, I would say. Also, the special education safety net eligibility threshold is reduced to 1.5 times the average per pupil expenditure for all school districts. So this bill will allow OSPI to reserve a portion of excess cost allocations for statewide special education activities. It also requires a creation of a statewide online system for managing IEPs to improve efficiency, compliance, and educator collaboration. The bill aligns the funding multiplier for early supports for infants and toddlers and ESIT program with pre through K multiplier, and also increasing it from 1.15 to 1.6381. So in this bill, also OSPI must develop an online system at managing the IEPs, ensuring that it's available to school districts at really no cost and meets the federal, state requirements. And lastly, this bill, the safety net funding will be distributed quarterly under certain conditions. This bill also will specifies guidelines for professional development and inclusionary practices for districts. As we move on to 5187, which is a transportation bill, the prime sponsor is Senator Wellman. And this bill is focused on improving transportation funding to really meet the diverse needs of students. In OSPI, within this bill, OSPI will provide, looks like Marissa got the bill up. I'll slow down. It looks like OSPI will provide an analysis of school districts' transportation costs and allocations by June 1st of 2028. And it also, within this analysis, it would include the data on mileage, ridership, costs, disaggregated data by various student categories, such as students needing special education services, homeless students, foster care students, and skills center attendees. And then OSPI is tasked with using this analysis to really develop a new and transparent, predictable student transportation funding model. That's really exciting and important. I would think so. And really within that new model, it will address the unique transportation challenges that all districts face throughout the state, whether that's, if you're in an urban or a rural area. Additionally, this bill provides about $400 per student for districts to support the transportation needs who are those who require special transportation due to homelessness, which is really aligned with the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. These funds will be, I guess, must be used for transportation costs related to homeless students. And lastly, as I could summarize this bill, it expands the reporting requirements and mandating that districts report the number of students requiring special transportation due to McKinney-Vento. So the overarching goal of this bill is to ensure that transportation funding is adequate, equitable, and really meets the needs of all students, especially those with unique circumstances. So as I conclude and give y'all a high level overview of all of these bills, it's really important and during this session as we focus on these member adopted positions in the big three. So you'll hear from more of me as these bills move forward, hopefully throughout the process. And yeah, I would conclude and take any questions that come my way.
Thank you so much, Levon. We do have a question in the chat that I need to dig into a little bit, but we'll be sure to provide a response here in the future. Thanks for giving an overview. As you all should be aware, WSSDA's priority is to focus on your priorities during the legislative session. There is a lot going on. We are looking forward to next week's first policy cutoff so that we can continue to narrow our focus. But we will continue to keep you apprised of the progress on your priorities. The good news is they are still moving forward. It's great to see them already introduced in the budget committee almost 2 weeks before the budget cutoff commences. So thank you so much for giving us an overview, Levon. You can all look forward to hearing from Levon in future in-session lives as these bills progress.
Thank
With
you.
that, I'm going to reintroduce, not that he needs any introduction, our friend and colleague Tyler Munch from OSPI. He visits us regularly to keep us apprised of some of the work that OSPI has been championing, and is probably our greatest champion as it relates to school construction efforts. And so really grateful to have you here, Tyler. You were requested by our membership. So you're
Unbelievable. I
I know.
usually only requested to pull my testimony from committee or leave the committee early or stop lobbying, but it's great
Well,
to
you're always welcome here, Tyler. You are
thank
always
you.
welcome here.
This is a great space. And as always, my greatest allies on the Hill every session are always Marissa, now Levon. So it's a great partnership. Even when I'm throwing bills out there that I know WSSDA doesn't like, sometimes I can go work with WSSDA to make those problems go away a little sooner. So
We
um,
like that. We like that.
uh,
Remind me, Tyler, are you driving the screen or do you need me to pull up the
I
presentation?
will drive if everything goes according to plan here. It says sharing is not turned on. I'm
Ah,
sending a request, but if you need to drive, we can do that. Okay. Let's see.
how does that
Now
feel?
I got it. Now I
Nah,
got it. All right.
sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
There's so many buttons to push for these things, you know?
I don't know if you caught it when my computer crashed in the House Education Committee like
Yes.
2 weeks ago.
We
I
were
had a
sitting.
bunch of statistics ready for them, and so this is very easy.
Awesome.
Uh,
Great.
can you see my screen?
We
I
sure
just
can.
Okay, the nice yellow one here. Okay. Hi everyone. Good to see you all again. Tyler Munch with the Superintendent of Public Instruction's office. I think Levon just covered a lot of the big issues. You're going to see me brush up against those, but I won't spend any significant time talking about them. Um, just going to frame this discussion again with what we asked for at the start of the session. Again, everyone here knows about the big three. We asked for the big three. We asked for special education. We asked for increased MSOC funding. And we also asked for transportation funding, which you'll see on the next slide. In addition to those big three, we've also been advocating for policies that increase the levy lid and provide LEA. We've been advocating for policies that provide additional mental health supports to students. And we also, as always, have been advocating for our school facilities. Another thing that I left on this slide is school board compensation. We had a school board compensation request this year. I wrote it and I lobbied it. And unfortunately, yes, I see the hearts. You may want to reserve those, unfortunately. I tried to get this bill sponsored and I took it to school board members that are elected, thinking that they would be natural champions for this. And unfortunately, the message I got was, it's not the right year, Tyler. So I talked to school board directors who I was hoping could do this, and they just said the budget is not sufficient to do this year. We think this is a better conversation for another year. Um, I got that message a few times and I kept trying, but unfortunately, I think at this point we're going to have to fight for that another day. It is something that this agency is completely dedicated to, though. I know WSSDA would be supportive, and I know we have other district advocates that support that policy, so it will not be going away. Um, so these are the high level views sort of what we were asking for. Special ed, we were asking for $2.6 billion, our bill. It's unlikely that our bill will be the vehicle that moves forward. It's looking more like the House will introduce their own bill that will be the special ed vehicle, but time will tell. Um, for safe and healthy school facilities, we have a record non-SCAP funding request, and that's because we asked for full funding of the Small District Modernization Grant Program. We requested $333 million, double what the program has ever received. And then, as usual, we have a request for the transportation program, or a transportation overhaul, rather. We've taken a few different bites of this apple. Originally, we asked for a complete STARS overhaul, and we proposed a new formula to, replace the STARS formula. The legislature didn't bite because it was too expensive. We tried that again. Yet again, the legislature didn't bite because it was too expensive. So then we ran a few bills targeted directly at special populations like McKinney-Vento students, foster students, students on an IEP, special ed. And that seems to have a little more traction right now. So Senator Wellman took what ended up being last year's version of the bill, and she had to carve it down even further to meet the obligations given to her by her leadership and the budget writers. And so what's moving forward right now is special passenger funding for McKinney-Vento students. Unfortunately, the other students were not included in this year's version of the bill because of the funding issues that the state is facing. We're going to continue to advocate for fully funding this. We need a revamp of the STARS formula, and we need to fully fund all student passenger categories, especially those that are at risk. We'll see what ends up happening, but ultimately this bill is another promise without much money attached to it. This bill tasks us to study it, as you heard from Levon, and we've already studied it, so we think we're ready to move forward. A little bit more, you can see the numbers that we originally asked for. We were asking for up to $13,000 in compensation for school board members. The way we structured our bill was right now in statute, I believe you all are limited to $3,000 in compensation. We did not change that statute. We kept that cap at 3, but then we went and said that the school board could approve additional compensation for board members who are traveling or going above and beyond, whatever it may be. And that new number, if approved by the board of directors, would allow compensation up to $13,000. So it's not a new $13,000 cap in some ways, but it provides a mechanism to get that $13,000 in compensation if approved by the board. Classified staff, we talked about that a little bit. Unfortunately, that was a courtesy hearing. We were trying to get classified staff increases up to 20K, but again, just not happening this year with the budget. So diving in a little bit into some of the bills that we're tracking this session, I don't want to rehash everything Levon has already stated. I guess, simple majority we did talk about. Marissa, I don't know if you saw it this morning. It just came to my attention an hour ago. But there is an amendment on the bar this morning in the Senate Early Learning Committee from Senator Krishna Dawson, who of course is a school board member. And so Senator Krishna Dawson introduced a 55% bill rather than a simple majority bill. This morning, her bill is scheduled to be voted out of that committee, and she dropped an amendment on her bill that lowers it from 55% to 50%, and then specifies that school districts will no longer collect impact fees in exchange for that simple majority policy. This is a big deal. There's only about 67 school districts that even collect impact fees, and a lot of them are the best positioned school districts to sort of absorb that temporary hit to get us to a simple majority. We are working on solutions for districts that rely on those impact fees. That way their budgets can stay solvent as we get ourselves to this simple majority policy. But it's a really exciting time, and it's the closest we've been to a simple majority since I've been in the state of Washington. 1120, those were those LEA bills and levy lift bills that unfortunately just aren't going to make it. House Bill 1356 is Rep. Berquist levy lift bill. I don't know what to expect on that one, so we will have to see. A few other bills just to get on your radar. 1314 is a Callan and Trudeau bill. in the capital budget space. Those are two very powerful capital budget writers, so you can expect that this bill will be moving forward, House Bill 1314. This bill starts a grant program for early learning facilities. School districts are eligible under the program to house these early learning facilities. Last year, this bill opened up the common school account to early learning facilities, and we opposed the bill on the grounds that K-12 schools need all of the revenue in the common school trust account. We had the bill fixed, and now the common school trust is out of the bill, and the bill is moving forward in a way that's friendly to school districts. So we now support the bill. I know Levon talked about MSOC. I will talk about House Bill 1538, Rep. Joel McIntyre bill. I think those of you who know Rep. McIntyre, he's from Waukegan. He is a small school district advocate and champion, and this is his newest attempt to provide assistance to small schools, particularly in this tough budget year. So the Small District Modernization Grant Program last year, they divided it into two categories: those schools with under 1,000 students and those with 3,000 or less. They were hoping that they could fund more projects for districts with 3,000 or less. However, because of poor capital gains tax revenue, the program is still limited to 1,000 students or less. McIntyre's bill would preserve that 1,000 students or less piece, and then offers a new sort of weighted formula to give extra preference to districts with very limited financial capacity, very low debt authority, and demonstrated school building and capital facility issues. So we're supporting that bill. 1609 is agency request legislation regarding the Board of Natural Resources. I know Russ is familiar with this one. This one allows the superintendent to appoint a designee, which there's a high likelihood that could be me, to the Board of Natural Resources. Again, I don't want to make any promises. Chris could appoint me. He could go and appoint someone from the, pardon me, getting a phone call here from another community. Thanks, Ross. So yeah, we'll see what we get here. We have a hearing on Friday. So a few other ones for your just to get them on your radar. We have this 1796 school construction debt bill from Callan and Dingra. This is a really interesting little bill. It's a mechanism for districts that can run levies to essentially avoid some of the challenges that they've had raising capital funds as a result of our current supermajority requirement. So I'll be curious to see if that bill moves. And then the final thing I would plug just for everyone here, Senate Bill 5190, Wellman's energy assessments. We know that the Clean Buildings Bill is an unfunded mandate, or Clean Buildings Law is an unfunded mandate. So anything to give our districts some grace as they attempt to tackle that would be greatly appreciated. All right. These are some topics of general interest. I just talked about simple majority and the impact fees. Another conversation we're entertaining a lot right now is how will SCAP react if we pass a simple majority? Won't the program just blow up into this very expensive program? We've been pushing back on that narrative, saying that's not true. You'll have an initial hit, but then it will sort of bow out and even itself out. And then there's, of course, those conversations about the levy lid and green buildings compliance. Another two bills I want to get on the radar of this group: House Bill 1534 and 5514. It's a Department of Commerce bill that offers compliance, what's the word I'm looking for? Incentives to comply with the Green Buildings Bill. I don't think it's a bill any of us will like particularly, but it's better than nothing, so take a look at it. And then another one is Rep. Mary Dye has a bill that would just essentially calculate how much the Clean Buildings Bill will cost to run. It's well documented that the fiscal note for that bill was less than honest, so this is a attempt to really get us a number that we could work with. I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to browse through this real quickly here. But we are having this conversation around SCAP this year. We, as you know, fought last year to get the student space allocation and the construction cost allocation increased. I think that conversation is in the back seat right now until the simple majority conversation reaches a conclusion. We got all our chips in on that simple majority conversation, and we don't want to do anything to jeopardize it. And increasing the amount of money that SCAP pumps out to schools might not be the best message to deliver while they're considering a simple majority. So we're just going to keep this on the back burner for now. Small district modernization grant, we have a $333 million request. That is unlikely to materialize, and I want to make that clear. That money is probably going to get pulled into SCAP and probably get pulled into the school seismic safety grant program. I still expect a sizable investment in small district modernization. Let's just say I expect it to look closer to like $150 million than $330 million. No one has given me that information, but just from watching this for a few years, I expect they'll land somewhere around there. School seismic safety, this is a big conversation, and I just think it's important that everyone know we're doing really technical work right now out on the coast. And the projects that we're working on the coast are some of the most expensive projects in the state. We only have about 7 of them, and then we'll start working inland, and we'll be performing retrofits in the Puget Sound area, and then Central Washington, and then Eastern Washington. That work will go much faster once we get off the coast, because right now we're having to do actual building relocations, moving schools out of the community they're in, because the community they're in is in a tsunami zone, to somewhere safer. When we get into Puget Sound, we're going to be putting steel rebar inside existing buildings, so it'll be a much faster process. This is the current list of districts that are currently in the queue for the school seismic safety grant program. No surprises here: Cape Flattery, North Beach, Hoquiam, Ocean Beach, Aberdeen, they're all coastal. We have a $150 million skill center request. And as always, we try and refill our grant buckets for school district health and safety to make sure that there's money and a couple $1 million on hand for any imminent urgent repairs that school districts need. I could go on talking for another hour, but I know we are short on time, and I hope that was helpful to you.
So helpful, Tyler. Thank you so much. Yes, there's plenty more to talk about, that's for sure. But do have a couple questions for you if you don't mind fielding us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just one clarification. I didn't hear you say this, but just in case, that the current cap for school board compensation is at 4,800.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah, and the goal here in your proposal would be to move it up to 13,000. Is that correct?
That's correct. I couldn't remember what the cap is, but so the cap stays the same. If that number is 4,800, it would stay at 4,800. And then we add a provision that says if your district needs to pay you more because you're going above and beyond, you can pay above that 4,800 up to $13,000.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
that would be locally funded, correct?
Originally, Marissa, we had the bill set up like Rep. Callen's bill last year. We got told you can't do that, it's too expensive. So then we took that off and it became locally funded. And then we got told, just don't do the bill at all.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's
So
a
that's
dance.
what happened.
We'll keep at it, especially in light of continued requests from the legislature in the form of bill mandates for our school directors to do mandatory trainings and other things. What I'm pushing back on is until there's adequate compensation or at least some adjustment from the last 2 decades or so, since 1987 when they last said it, that we can't be adding more to our already overflowing plates until we revisit this compensation discussion. So
100%. And I got that $13,000 number because I took the number you have in statute right now and I applied a 20-year inflationary factor to it. So that's how we got there. I hear you. It's 1987 or whatever it was. I mean, Ronald Reagan was president, and I was not alive, so it's probably time to revisit it.
Don't tell people that. It makes them feel bad. All right, couple more questions. What is OSPI doing, if anything, about Senate Bill 5120, the LAP high poverty bill from Nobles?
Uh, I'm gonna have to take a rain check on that one. That's just not a bill that I'm working for the agency right now. We definitely have a position on it. It's just not in my wheelhouse, so my apologies. I can get you an answer to that, though. What was the bill number, Marissa?
It's 5120. It's the LAP high poverty bill. And just for a little context, that was a Senator Noble's bill. And my understanding from Chair Wellman herself was that they heard it in Senate Early Learning and K-12 as a courtesy this year, but did not have the intention to move it out of committee because of the high cost of that bill and the competition with some of the other funding priorities.
Yeah,
So I think sort of the pin or the nudge here is to continue the conversation around ensuring that funding follows students and addresses high poverty and greatest need.
gotcha. Thank
I
you.
know, which I know is important to the superintendent as well
Of
as
course.
team. Yeah. Another question about how OSPI is thinking about the lift on the levy lid
Yeah,
given the McCleary decision many
yeah.
years ago and how this creates some disparities.
Uh, is that the whole question? I want to make sure.
Well, is OSPI endorsing raising the levy lids in spite of McCleary is the question. I was trying to frame it a little differently for you, but
No, no,
I'll give it to you direct.
yeah, no, that's fine. I don't hide, except for in select committees, but not here. Um, we support the levy lid, but our position has been that any levy lid has to come with sufficient LEA to make sure that that inequity doesn't keep growing. So, I think the only way we ever get to a deal on this is that LEA districts and their legislators end up, endorsing and signing on to whatever bill is the vehicle for levy. I think any levy bill that's going to pass has to have sufficient LEA. And if it doesn't have sufficient LEA, I'll be up there telling them what they're setting their table up for. I mean, we are not beating around the bush on the inequities in the McCleary discussion. We know that those inequities cannot exist. Our perspective is that the levy lid needs the lift and the LEA needs the lift. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it. And just for the benefit of the whole, the perspective of WSSDA this past week and the week before, when some levy LEA bills have been heard, is first fund the big three. That's your constitutional responsibility. That's the obligation that supports and serves all 295 school districts. We recognize that the sort of political likelihood is that some kind of levy lift will be addressed in the legislature this year. And we don't want to let our legislators off the hook, that this is a state problem first. The funding issues for our schools are a state issue.
Yeah.
And they can't kick the can down the road by allowing locals to pay for their responsibility.
Totally agree, and I'll be sitting there demanding LEA for that reason. I know it's not necessarily enough, but
Yeah.
it's a way to keep them on the hook.
Yeah, absolutely. And preaching to the choir, but just begs to be said that not every school district can actually pass a levy, much less a bond,
Absolutely.
as we are learning again and again with every time we see it at the ballot.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I don't know what public forums I've said it in, but we're gonna need a solution because simple majority is not gonna solve everyone's problem, right?
Yeah,
Um,
amen.
so we will need some solutions there.
Preach on, my friend. One last comment. I don't know if you want to respond, but from our favorite executive director of rural education centers,
Oh,
Jim Kawakowski, about House Bill 1538 being a game changer, requiring local contribution but a max of half their debt capacity and a tax rate limit of $1.75 per 1,000. So, anything you wanted to say about that? He seems excited about it. How about you?
no, it's a great bill. Jim is I think I leaned in a little too hard on the fact that originally McIntyre was trying to keep that money for 1,000 or less districts. That's become much less significant in light of the capital gains tax. And so the real benefit of this bill is exactly what Jim is talking about, the limited local share requirement and the increased money that the district would get. We're totally 100% pro on this bill. I had the pleasure of talking to McIntyre before he even drafted it, so we've been there every step of the way, and I'll be supporting this one. Jim, if you're wondering why I wasn't in testimony, I was stuck in a meeting with my boss, the big boss, which is why I couldn't make it. But I was signed in pro, and I will be testifying pro as long as I'm able to next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah,
Well,
thank
we
you.
need to move on to our other presenters, but I just want to thank you, Tyler, for being here and a friend to us, for all of your benefit. We take our work very seriously. It is serious work up there at the Capitol. But if you want someone in your corner and to make it feel a little bit more fun, Tyler Munch is one of your guys there. So thanks, Tyler. Appreciate
Right
you.
back at you and Jim. Have a good meeting.
Bye. All right. Without further ado, I would love to bring Russ Pfeiffer Hoyt, School Director of Mount Baker School District and our fearless chair of the Trust Lands Advisory Committee. Wanted to give Russ a chance to share a little bit about what the heck is Trust Lands, what's the Common School Trust, and why you should care about it, and anything else we should know. Russ, I'll let you take it from here, and I'm happy to pull up your presentation so I can drive while you talk.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yes, if you could start with the presentation. This is the most condensed version of my Trust Lands presentation, so I'm doing a shortened version.
You betcha. I'm popping it up now. Little bit of technology.
Okay. So once we get this expanded, with this picture, you see a typical Department of Natural Resource managed school trust lands that provides revenue for schools. This is a picture from within Mount Baker School District, close to my own home, but you can see the larger trees behind and the smaller trees in the front. It's sustainable trust revenue. The trees that in the front will grow up in time for all of the larger trees that have been harvested. So it's sustainable year in and year out. So we'll do the next slide. So there are two trusts that are managed by the Department of Natural Resources for the benefit of schools. First of all, the Common School Trust, which was granted its statehood, with currently almost 2 million acres, 1.8 million acres. It was granted to permanently help fund public schools. This was a very far-sighted program that Congress thought that could help provide revenue for schools far off into the future. So primarily in Washington State, that's timberland, but we also have orchards, vineyards, wheat, green energy, which is solar and wind power leases, commercial leases, including a Fred Meyer's, a Lowe's store, and recently the department has been in the process of acquiring a Hagen's grocery store in Bellingham that will provide about $1 million of a year in lease revenue. So all of that revenue from the Common School Trust goes into the School Construction Assistance Account, and it's added to other state revenue in the School Construction Assistance Account. Over the last several decades, I think Common School Trust revenue has provided somewhere around $11 billion to the total over those time to the School Construction Assistance Account. State Forest Trust is a local trust, not statewide. It's county by county, and the revenue goes to the county and the junior taxing districts, including school districts, where the timber harvests are located. So that's it. It's very important, particularly to the smaller rural districts that that have substantial amount of state forest trusts. So we go to the next slide. And this is just a little bit of flavor of state forest lands within school districts. This is just the first page of a list of school districts that you can see by acreage. Cedar Woolley is the largest with over 45,000 acres. Mount Baker, my own district, is next at 29,000, and then it continues down from there. But there's over 100 school districts in Washington State that have state forest lands within their boundary, and then thereby can be eligible to receive revenue from those timber harvests. Next slide. The trust is managed under quite strict law that governs how the trust is managed, and I wanted to point out that the Department of Natural Resources must maintain undivided loyalty to the beneficiaries. There's lots of other purposes that people would like to see happen on state managed trust lands, but they are required to maintain undivided loyalty, impartial to current and future beneficiaries. So it's these laws are longstanding, and they're established to maintain the interests of the beneficiaries. And then the next slide. So before I take questions, I wanted to say also that we met with newly elected Commissioner of Public Lands, Dave Upthegrove, recently, with WSSDA staff members and myself. And first of all, we asked the commissioner to describe his vision for the Department of Natural Resources, and then we shared school district concerns with the commissioner's 6 months pause on certain timber sales, focusing on our need for steady revenue from the timber program. And then we talked about the mutually beneficial relationship that WSSDA has had with all the commissioners of public lands for several decades, and we both expressed a strong interest in keeping that great mutual relationship going. So with that, I'll if there's any questions, I'll answer any questions or comments.
I don't see any questions in the chat. I would remind folks that any school director can participate in the Trust Lands Advisory Committee meetings. Even if you don't have anything to know or offer, we'd love to have you there as a ally and a learner at our next TLAC meeting, which will be at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, February 25th. We will have Jenny Choi, who's the education policy lead from the governor's office. She is new to that role, obviously, since Governor Ferguson is new to that role. And she's going to be there as a listener and a learner. So it's an opportunity to share strengths and opportunities about a partnership with the governor's office and WSSDA from the perspective of trust lands. And then we always have staff from DNR attend. Dwayne Emmons is the person who joins us. He's one of the legislative leads at DNR, and he shares some of the forward-moving bills that we should either be supporting or concerned about and weighing in on. So it's a very informative monthly meeting. Any of you are welcome, and we'd love to have you there. Trust lands, common school trust, forest revenue makes such a huge difference to so many of our schools. And if we truly are in this together, you should all be paying attention.
Thank you. And one last thing, if you do have state forest land within your school district boundaries and want to either understand it better or learn how you can maximize the revenue from that from the state forest lands, you're always welcome to get in touch with me, and I can help walk you through it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Russ. Appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us as always. Nobody knows as much about trust lands as Russ Pfeiffer Hoyt. Thank you so much. I am going to put in the chat if you are interested in joining Trust Lands in the future, the Trust Lands meetings. Levon is the staff support for that committee, and I would ask you to email him and he will give you information about how you can participate. It is all virtual Zoom, so you can participate from the comforts of your home in your pajama pants. Would love to have you there. I'm going to now give one of our colleagues, Tim Clark, the opportunity to share a little bit about some advocacy success stories and some strategies from the perspective of the Kent School District. He had the opportunity to bring a group of school directors and other folks from his district to the Capitol, I think the week before last, and I wanted him to have an opportunity to share with you how those conversations went and what materials were shared during that time. Tim, you want to go ahead and turn your screen on and I'll pull up the resource that you shared with me?
Okay. So first of all, the Kent School District, being an urban district, is split between two legislative districts, the 33rd and 47th. And if you could bring up on the screen for me what I took with me. Okay, so it's a one page, but it has a great deal of information and clearly is targeted at our three big issues that we're trying to get at. Now, the advantage of this, clearly, of course, is you're going to leave it with them, and so they can get into the details of some of these things. But because it's so broad with specifics underneath it, it allows for going into the topics based on the background of the legislator that you're actually dealing with. So, for instance, we have a brand new legislator because of a Senate vacancy that occurred. And so Representative Obras literally was starting into the state legislature, and we didn't have a big working relationship with him to begin with. But we're very fortunate. Obras happens to be very big in the Filipino community. And so within the urban districts, that gives us some background and support in many of the issues that we face in public schools. But with him, because he's new, we simply dealt with just special ed. We didn't try to get into the rest of it. And I'm fortunate I'm not a rookie in special ed because my wife is a school psychologist and I had 28 years in the classroom. So, and then because my partner, the superintendent, also is well versed in special ed, when we tried to have that conversation with him, we just made it very narrow and then supported it so he could, for argument's sake, understand that there are bleed overs in cost in special education. So, for instance, if we had a student, a victim of the Iraqi war, and he had no arms or legs because of an explosion and was developmentally delayed. Well, to get him to school required that we had to go in and build a strapping mechanism to get him into a wheelchair, and then a special bus. Well, that special bus stuff shows up over in transportation. Then when we began to deal with some of the, I don't have to spend a lot of time with special ed with Senator Kaufman in the 47 because her special ed daughter went through the Kent School District. And so that was a short topic on that. And we could move on to some of the other challenges. We are blessed with people that are veterans that have made an effort to connect with the school district. So Stearns and Orwell and Inneman and the others Most of them have already been in the school district on visits and have made a connection with the superintendent. And then simply by the nature of my particular background, I have been involved in local politics going back into the early 1990s. So I got redistricted out of the 47th, and I now live in the 33rd. And within the Democratic Party in the legislative district, I've been the chair of both of them at one time or the other. So I had a working relationship with certainly in the 33rd for quite some time. And like I said, Orwell has been very good to us, helping and support us in mental health pilots and whatnot. The others, like Stearns, they've only been there; they're in their third year, I believe. But he is your typical. I want my community to be supported. So my suggestion when I use this, if you were dealing with someone who was much more passive towards school funding, the beginning point is the whole point of the graph is to show the shortfalls. And so what you begin to express with is, of course, the truth, which is these are the same households in your constituency. And we're just trying to deliver this very basic mandatory service, but these things aren't working. And anyway, Marissa, anything? Oh, I did have one other thing. I'm yesterday's presentation to from Dan Steele talking about that basic graph information. He gave us a website that does that for all the school districts. So ours was a color graph, but you could use their material. And
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to try to get that link up.
I've got it if I can get it, but I can't. I'm sending it to you.
Okay. I think it's like fundingwashingtonschools.org. I think that's what it, nope, that's not it. It's WashingtonSchoolFunding.org. That's what it is. I got it. So there was a request for your chart as well as this link. So I have put those in the chat for everyone to download. But if for some reason you have trouble downloading from the chat, please feel free to email me directly and I'll share it with you there. Tim, I'm curious how you took a group of school directors and staff to the Capitol, is that right? How did that
It
go?
was literally, it was just the superintendent and I.
Oh, okay.
He jointly attended with us. We had another director that was with us, and we attended the joint legislative training program. So
Great.
we've been in sync all along.
That's excellent. That's good news. In terms of the funding gaps document, who did you work with your district to give you those data points and help you with that chart?
I requested that early from the superintendent, and that's actually a copy of something that I caught from one of the other legislative reps from it's either North King County or Snohomish County in one of those schools districts, and so it just made sense to me that we should and so Dr. Vela was kind enough to do that for me early.
It's great. So for the benefit of all of you, I'm trying to bring forward some examples of your peers in other districts doing advocacy work. There's no perfect way to do any of this, and you are all coming from it with various experiences and lenses. But there's a benefit in hearing that there are doors that are available for you to open, to have conversations with your legislators. It might be the first time you've ever done it. Go ahead and get started now. And eventually you can be like Tim, doing it for years and feeling more comfortable and confident. But you'll never feel comfortable and confident doing it until you start doing it. So Thank you for modeling that, Tim, and for sharing resources and your experience. Hopefully it's a benefit to others. The right time to do that work is right now. I know we're at time, but I just wanted to point you to a couple additional resources. WSSDA has created a couple school construction resources, including a short and a long topic brief. As you're having conversations with your legislators about various school construction related issues, I hope that these might be resources to you, so feel free to use them. I have not yet uploaded the Bill Watch for week 6, but I will do that shortly. So this link will be accurate within the next hour. But just know that because next week is policy cutoff on Friday, February 21st, there are less bills being heard in committees and more executive sessions. This is your opportunity. If you see any bills listed for executive session, they may already be well on their way out of committee since they've been scheduled. But if you have concerns about any one of them, you should be messaging the members of the House and Senate committees, education committees, to express your concerns, because you could pump the brakes on their forward trajectory if a new concern was brought forward that hadn't been considered yet. I would encourage you to do that. Please join us for InSession Live next week. Next week is WSSDA Advocacy Week, so we will really be highlighting best practices, experiences about how to do advocacy well, with the hope that for the second half of this legislative session, you all will feel equipped and supported in continuing very important advocacy work. We're not even halfway there yet, and we've got to see those funding bills through and try to improve the bills that we have concerns about, so that they're a better version of themselves before they're passed, if at all. Thank you for all of the work that you all are doing, and we will see you this time next week.